December 26th always carried a melancholic air. The fervor of Christmas vanished like a dream, leaving behind wilted decorations, flickering lights, and a weather that seemed to resent human presence. For Sarah, that night felt particularly stifling. The store where she worked was at the center of a small commercial district, surrounded by empty streets cloaked in a dense fog that made everything feel smaller and more claustrophobic. The wind lashed against the windows like a constant whisper, almost as if it were trying to warn of something. Sarah walked slowly to the entrance, turning the key with a creak. The inside of the store was as desolate as the world outside, with shelves cluttered with a mess of unsold Christmas gifts. The flickering lights from the decorations cast erratic shadows, creating the illusion of movement in a space that should have been empty. The clock on the wall read 8:30 p.m., but for Sarah, time crawled like a frozen river. It was her night shift at the store, as usual. A simple job, though unbearably monotonous. The bustle of Christmas had passed, leaving a palpable emptiness. Instead of excited customers and radiant decorations, only disordered shelves and erratic, tired holiday lights remained. Sarah had never been a fan of Christmas. To her, the season only meant longer working hours and less time to read in peace at her small apartment. However, there was something especially bleak about the days following the holiday. The store, which had been a hub of energy and color weeks before, now resembled a mausoleum filled with unwanted items. She rose from her chair behind the counter, stretching to relieve the stiffness in her muscles. Glancing at the shelves, she saw dolls with rigid smiles, wooden trains with chipped paint, stuffed animals that seemed to have lost some of their stuffing, all part of the unsold inventory she needed to stack in the storage room before closing. Suddenly, the bells on the front door jingled. Sarah looked up, startled. It was late, and she wasn't expecting any more customers that night. A tall man in a dark coat and scarf entered. He moved slowly, his hands in his pockets, stopping in front of the shelves. His face was partially obscured, but his movements were strangely deliberate. He studied each toy as if evaluating them. Sarah cleared her throat, trying to break the silence.
Can I help you with something?
The man didn't reply. He turned his head toward her briefly before returning his attention to the toys. A chill ran down Sarah's spine, something about him wasn't right. Finally, he turned and left without a word, leaving the door open just long enough for the icy wind to sweep into the store. Sarah closed the door behind him, shivering. For several minutes, she stood still, trying to shake off the unease his presence had left behind. Shortly after, her boss appeared briefly, stomping in with quick, heavy steps.
Stack all the unsold toys in the storage room. We'll decide what to do with them tomorrow.
Without waiting for a response, he dropped a task list on the counter and left as abruptly as he'd arrived. Sarah glanced at the list with resignation before turning back to the shelves. As she gathered the toys, an unsettling feeling crept over her. The air seemed colder, heavier, and the lights flickered more frequently. She carried a large box of toys into the storage room. The space was cluttered, with old boxes piled high and metal shelves groaning under the weight of years of accumulation. She flicked on the light, which blinked a few times before stabilizing. As she began stacking the toys, she noticed that some of the dolls had features she hadn't noticed before. One in particular looked different, its smile was too wide, and its glassy eyes reflected the light in an unsettling way. Sarah averted her gaze, feeling foolish for being intimidated by a mere toy.
Don't be paranoid, Sarah.
She muttered to herself.
Paranoid? I'd say you're being quite realistic,
Said a voice, soft and laced with sarcasm. Sarah dropped the toy, spinning toward the storage room door. There, floating amidst the shadows, was the entity. It was a figure without a defined shape, a dark mass that seemed to absorb the light around it. Though it had no eyes or mouth, Sarah knew it was looking straight at her.
What do you want now?
She asked, trying to maintain her composure.
Nothing important, just watching. Always a pleasure to see you so engaged.
Sarah sighed and returned to her task. The entity had accompanied her since childhood, appearing randomly but always at the most inopportune moments. She had learned to ignore it most of the time, though its presence always gnawed at her stomach.
Well, observe silently,
she said, stacking the last box. The entity chuckled softly, a sound like a distorted echo.
Oh, dear, I have no intention of staying quiet. Tonight promises to be interesting.
Sarah closed the storage room door and started walking back to the main shelves. But then she heard a sound. At first, she thought it was her imagination, but she soon realized it was coming from the storage room. It was a soft creak, followed by a wet, slithering noise, as if something was moving among the boxes. Sarah stopped in front of the door, her hand on the knob, hesitating to open it. Finally, she turned the handle and slowly opened the door. What she saw inside took her breath away. The stack of toys she had arranged was now scattered across the floor, as though something had dragged them. In the center of the mess was a dark, amorphous mass, constantly shifting and writhing. It was a mixture of torn wrapping paper, broken toys, and crumpled ribbons. The creature seemed alive, though it had no recognizable features. Sarah stepped back, tripping over the doorframe. The creature emitted a deep hum, a sound that made the air vibrate and seemed to resonate in her chest.
Well, this is new.
The entity remarked, appearing beside her with a mocking grin.
What the hell is that?
Sarah whispered, her voice trembling.
Oh, I'm not sure. But it seems you've found some delightful company for the night.
Sarah slammed the door shut and backed away, trying to steady her breathing. But the noises inside the storage room grew louder. Something heavy struck the door, making it shudder. For the first time in a long while, Sarah felt completely out of control. The creature didn't move like a physical being. It seemed to vanish and reappear closer with each flicker of the lights. The air was filled with distorted laughter and creaking sounds as Sarah ran toward the back exit. The entity floated beside her, savoring the chaos.
Run, Sarah. Run faster. Oh, wait, you forgot something, your keys.
It said with a mocking laugh. Sarah reached the final hallway but tripped, and the keys slipped from her grasp. She dropped to her knees, frantically searching in the dim light as the creature loomed closer. A tendril made of plastic shards and ribbons stretched toward her. Sarah screamed, squeezing her eyes shut as she felt the creature's void engulf her. Suddenly, the clear sound of the front door bells broke the silence. The creature hesitated, faltering, and its form began to unravel. When Sarah opened her eyes, the store was empty. There was no trace of the creature or the entity. Only the echo of the bells lingered in the air, mocking her. She stood there, gasping for breath, unable to tell if she was truly safe or if this was just the beginning of something far worse.